if I read the script and David wasn't attached to it, this is the kind of script which you'd read and think like, wow, this is amazing, but this is never going to get made, ever. Because everything like that is never made. You see anything which is slightly different, you know it's never going to get made. You know, I always thought after The Dark Knight, for instance, like, it makes tons and tons of money, and Heath's doing something which is just, like, it's outside, it's still perfectly, like, people understand what he's doing. It's not like he's doing something totally crazy.
Right.
But it's slightly outside the box of what people are usually used to seeing. And I really thought that was going to change everything about how big budget movies are made. But it didn't. No. Like, and so, I don't know, if every single actor wasn't afraid of trying to do, you know, something slightly abstract and you know, not concerned about their movie making tons and tons of money, then eventually the industry would change.
But I mean, you and other guys in your position, can you make these kinds of films then? And not just as actors?
I think you can once. I don't know how many other times. I'm desperately trying to get a superhero movie now.
Are you really? Yeah.
You know, The Dark Knight came out when I was 13. I talk people like, you know, I say that all the time, but it's true. I mean, Heath Ledger.
What did you learn?
It's a remarkable dedication to being present in the moment. And I don't want to sound cliched or anything, but you see like actors go in the control room and you're like, well, that's not as interesting to me as an audience member.
Yeah.
But if you see an actor outside the control room, like I think of Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight or Joaquin Phoenix in The Master when he's opposite Phil Hoffman, or I can think of a number of other things where you're like, whoa, that guy doesn't know what he's doing right now. He's just living it. And that's exciting because then it's that mirror thing again where you're learning about humanity or that character or that version of an environment that they're portraying in the movie.
And did you get to know Heath at all?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I admired him so much as an actor and as a spirit and as a creature. He was one of those very unbridled spirits. I don't know if you ever met him.
He seemed like it.
Yeah, and yeah, there's some. What do you say? What do you say?
He really had it. I mean, it was a natural.
Yeah, but even beyond that, he wasn't of this world. He wasn't of this world.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Heath and I, for a month, were shuffled in and out of rooms, not ever seeing each other. Like, I was locked in a room. I would come in, and then Heath would be reading with someone, and then he would be shuffled out and then locked in a room, and then I would go out and read with them. And we did that, and I never knew him. I just heard his name. And, yeah, and then we didn't, neither of us got the part. But it was a long process, a beautiful process, and Baz was really wonderful. It was a real creative process through all of it, and I remember, you know, when I finally did meet Heath, we sort of bonded over our frustration over the auditioning process, and then I remember actually, after this movie, I know you're about to show, so don't pretend like you're not going to. He called me up after Brokeback came out, and he was, you know, it was a great success, and he was like, hey, mate. I was like, hey. He's like, I want to tell you something. I was like, what? He's like, Baz Luhrmann offered me a part in his next movie. And he's like, I just want to tell you, I turned it down. For both of us. I was like, thanks, man. But yeah, that was the kind of guy he was. Yeah.
It was such a treat to rewatch that film recently as well and kind of think about what to ask you about it. And the thing that I wanted to ask you was about this relationship. You know, he says 20 years. And that relationship that is so long and is so distant at times. And how you and Heath worked on that together as to how it would be when you met up over, you know, X amount of time. Was it something that you talked about in terms of?
Absolutely. I mean, we were very young, you know. I think our perspective on age was confused, you know. There was in that scene, there was a take I did where I was like hobbling around, you know. And it was like, you're 40, you know.
Like Yoda on a stick.
Oh. The things that you learn, you know. I look at that scene now and the things that you learn.
Yeah.
You know, I look at the choices that Heath was making at that time, and he was years beyond me. And
In what way do you mean?
my God, I see. I remember talking with him before we began shooting, and we were shooting in the middle of basically nowhere. You know, most of the time. It was a wonderful time. We were all living in trailers, you know, by a river. And there were 4 trailers: Aang's, mine, Heath's, Michelle's, our first AD, Michael Hausman, who we were blessed to have as our first AD because he's just, you know, a brilliant producer, and we just needed an AD. And now those 4 or 5 trailers got one less when Heath and Michelle ended up falling in love and staying in the same one, you know.
Party trailer.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I mean, we'd wake up in the morning, one of us would make breakfast for everyone, and then each one of us, one by one, would slowly walk to set, you know. That was the beginning of that. But I think the choices he was making were incredible acting choices about craft that I didn't really understand yet. He said to me, I remember him saying, you know, I think that he is very sensitive, that Ennis is very sensitive to light, you know, and I feel like he doesn't really love the sound of his own voice. And I remember thinking at, like, you know, what, however, early 20s, I remember just thinking, like, cool, you know. And now they're all things that are part of my process and part of the way I process, you know, character and the sort of the entire journey. But I see his choices, and I see the minutia of them, and things I didn't understand while I was working with him, and things I could see. You know, the interesting thing about watching that is I was on the other side of that coverage watching him, you know. I saw it in person, you know, and now I saw it was cut together, and it was just beautiful work. Beautiful work. And he was way ahead of his time.
How did Heath's death affect you?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I can answer that in one answer. Personally, it affected me in ways I can't really necessarily put into words, or even would want to talk about publicly. But in terms of professionally, I think, you know, I was at an age where, like, mortality was not always clear to me. Like, I don't think was that clear to me, you know?
At an age when you have not lost a lot of friends.
No.
Right?
No. And particularly because I think you live in this bubble too of making films, you know. There's this, like, weird way everybody kind of they're real friends, and there is a real community, but there also is that kind of, you know, there's that Macklemore new album where he says, like, the curtain closes and nobody notices, you know. And I do think that's true, and I think that's okay, you know. But I think at the time I sort of assumed everyone would notice, you know, and they did with Heath dying, but I think gave you the experience of what this is fleeting, and none of the sort of attention or sort of synthesized, like, love that comes from the success of a film or that really matters at all. You know, what matters is the relationships you make when you make a film, and the people you learn from when you're preparing for a film, and that changed a lot for me.
Great. Thanks. And here we are in Clerkenwell Close, it's called. And this is the pub that we used for the scene where the wagon gets smashed up. The wagon was actually standing right here. And we've got our drunks out there, and Heath's in his clown costume. And the thing takes off and heads up this road. And Heath's got to run up this road past all these explosions, and the wagon, when people running after him, and the wagon finally disappears around the corner down there. And that was the last shot we did of Heath, disappearing from the film, from our world, from everything. That night was quite extraordinary because the effects people were tired and Heath is running and we had all these explosions going off. One actually, they're supposed to go off after he passes, and one went off right in front of him, and a piece of shrapnel or whatever it was, not shrapnel, whatever it was in the explosion, hit him just by the eye, that close. And that man was removed and Heath carried on and did more. But this is it.
This was makeup and costume tests with Heath. We do this for all the characters. And I thought it'd be nice to have this on the TV just to see how playful Heath is. I mean, he was trying on various costumes. We didn't know which ones would work. And at the same time, we'd also put in blue contact lenses into his eyes too, to see if that would change him. Because at one point we were going to have one of those blue contact lenses fall out. Again, a moment when, who is this guy? The others would ask. He's not at all what he appears. And it's very interesting when you watch him in the white suit, when he's now looking smooth. And you can see how much fun he was having. He's just incredibly playful. And now, this would have been Heath during the Johnny Depp sequence, practicing his dance. I mean, smooth, dangerous. He looks like actually a completely different person. And that's what I love about him. He was he could change. With so little effort, Heath would just turn into somebody else. These were our earlier rehearsals on the stage to get a sense of what we were doing, how the lighting might work, how people might act and react. Ba-bum. Thank you, Heath. Goodbye.
I think there's a misconception that Heath was in quite a dark place when he was making The Dark Knight. Yeah, exactly. You were prepping Parnassus with him when he was on the set of that film. Can you tell us a little bit about the stories that he told you about making that movie?
Well, he would come back from shooting when he was here in London, and he was giggling the whole time. He couldn't believe what he got away with, is what it was about. He said, this is extraordinary. They can't touch me. Because I'm the Joker. And in scenes where he's supposed to be being, tortured or whatever, he said, they can't get at me. He said Aaron Eckhart was going crazy because Aaron couldn't match him. He tried to go there and be nastier. He said, no, you can't get me. I'm just the Joker. I'm free and loose. And I've never seen somebody come back from a day's shooting more giggly that this was fun. It was, and that's what's so weird. They thought it was a dark place. No, as the Joker, you've got power over everybody. So he realized in those interrogation scenes, they couldn't do a thing to me. I was free. And the ideas of some of the stuff, he just loved it. It kind of, in a strange way, it felt like Johnny on Fear and Loathing. So you got a really solid base you're working with, and now you just explode. But no, the way the press, see again, it's stories, and they try to stick you into a story. And the story is the tortured guy, he's on drugs, he's all this, and that's how he died. It's not that at all. I'm not going to tell you the real story, but the real story is this, there were things going on that were making him, just wearing him out more than anything on Parnassus. He would come at work in the morning having to deal with what was going on with lawyers and all sorts of shit. And he'd come in the morning just exhausted. By the end of the day, he was just like this again. because the work was what it was about, and he was so good. He was utterly generous to everybody. I mean, Lily Cole was suddenly, you know, she's stuck in there with these really great actors with very little experience, and he brought it out of her. There are scenes with Christoph where he's ad-libbing, 'cause he had never really ad-libbed before, and I just gave him room because I knew he was in there. Scene where towards the end, where he's as Tony trying to get back into the mirror, and he's trying to just relax, chocolate melting over your head. This wasn't in the script. It was Heath just flying. Now, what's interesting about it, when I look at Heath in Parnassus, he looks like a guy, he's 35, 36 years old. He was 26 years old, 27 he was. I mean, he was like 10 years older. He looked it and behaved than he really was. It was quite extraordinary. But no, it's one of the great losses. It's sad because like Philip Seymour Hoffman is another one. But at least Phil had a few more years. He had another 20 years on Heath. Heath would have been whatever. I mean, Brando wouldn't have been close to him, I think, by the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few problems in my career, but Heath's death was particularly just horrible because he was a really close friend. He was an extraordinary actor. I mean, there's a side of me that knows he was, without a doubt, the best actor of his generation, and he was just getting better and better, and to lose that is just horrible. When Heath died, right in the middle of Parnassus, we were in Vancouver, and Amy, my daughter, who's somewhere in the audience there, who was one of the producers on the film, said, "You've got to come into my office." And I said, "Well, I'm busy. I'm trying to save some money in the art department." She's come in, and there it was on the BBC website, "Heath is dead." And it made no sense, because we'd just seen him a couple of days before, and him dying was impossible. But he was dead, and so it just completely killed us. I mean, and I just said, "It's over. The film is finished. We're going home." And then people like Amy and Nicola Pecorini, my cinematographer, they just kept beating me up and said, "No, you've got to solve the problem. We're going to make this film. We're going to finish this film for Heath." And it took, I don't know, how long did it take? A couple of weeks before I started thinking again? 3 weeks, okay. Good. And then the idea, because it was suggested, "Oh, let's get another actor to replace Heath." And I said, "No, we're not going to do that. Number one, you couldn't get an actor that good who would be available because we had to keep working." And then it just struck me that, well, the character goes through the mirror 3 times. Let's get 3 friends. And again, Amy forced me to call Johnny Depp. And Johnny, because what was happening at that point, all the money, the bankers and everybody were leaving. They were going home, because you can't finish a film when the star is dead in the middle of it like that. And Johnny said, "You know, whatever you want, I'll be there." And that, when the money people heard that, ooh, they started their retreat. They slowed down. "Oh, really?" And then we just started looking for other friends of Heath's. And Colin and Jude were friends, because I wanted to keep it in the family. It had to be people who knew him and were doing it for the right reasons. And Colin and Jude said yes, and Johnny, we finally got Johnny on board. It's one thing for Johnny to say yes, it's another thing to organize his schedule. And it worked out, and we made the film, and when people see it, they can't imagine that it wasn't written that way. But I didn't change the script at all. It's exactly the same. And what is so disturbing is when Johnny is talking, and you're seeing the little boats go past with Princess Di and James Dean, about living, dying young, never growing old. These were all words that were in the original script. And it was very spooky to think we had written in a death in there without knowing it. There's even a scene in there, which I won't tell you which one it is, which we shot, and Heath is in it, but Heath was dead when we shot it. It was a couple months after he died, and nobody has spotted the scene, and he's there. So I think everybody worked very hard. We managed to make it happen, And so for me, the film is not only one of my favorite films, but it's also the most extraordinary achievement that we managed to, out of a disaster, turn out a really wonderful film. So.
Monsters Ball, like that performance of such vulnerability and just this beautiful sort of damaged creature that he gave us. And it was straight after actually Luke. I watched the first 20 minutes of the film in Luke's lounge room, and then we sent the script straight away to Heath. Yeah, what I learnt working with Heath and Abby was that the lead in a film has so much responsibility for their own performance, and I would try and would kind of push or lead or coax Heath and Abby. Often I thought, oh no, we're not sort of seeing the expressiveness in the room enough in a way that you know, as a theatre director, you look for what that communication in the air is, and I learnt so much from these two guys about. You know, they had their own truths kind of ticking away, and it's something that hit me like a thunderbolt, lightning bolt, and a thunderclap in the edit of just seeing the architecture of their performances, you know, all sort of fitting into place, and that's an extraordinary gift for two great film actors to have and to give to me.
And Heath Ledger, who's here today also talking about the film. Why was he chosen for the emotional core, so to speak, of the Dylan character?
He's just one of the most sensitive and brilliant actors of his age, I think, working today. And I wanted somebody who, you know, this character could have very easily been played ugly and someone you really had very little sympathy for, because he kind of flaunts his sexism at certain points around the Charlotte Gainsbourg character. But Heath has such subtlety and he's so likable and sympathetic that you understand all of the sides in this complex relationship. And you certainly feel sympathy for Charlotte Gainsbourg, who's so compelling in the film. But it's complex, like relationships are. There's not just one good guy, one bad guy. Life is complicated, and I think you feel that by these two actors.
He sort of found something as an actor that I'd never seen before, and I hadn't actually seen before in him as a guy. You know, he kind of accessed a darkness and I guess a sort of a rawness of spirit that, you know, was really important and really fundamental to Ned's character.
Chris had some brief encounters with Heath, and I had done a film with Heath a couple of years before, actually I think 3 years before, maybe 2, another Terry Gilliam film called Brothers Grimm. And I got close with Heath during the making of that film, and one of the great things about Heath that I saw in that film, well, not just one, actually there were many great things about it. First of all, that was a film that was made under very difficult circumstances, and Heath was always the coolest guy around. He could go with any flow, you know what I mean? Nothing that happened that didn't affect his role would knock him off. When the camera rolled, he would do his stuff. And he always brought something. No matter what was on the page, no matter what he discussed with the director, he always brought a great idea or 2 or 3 about what to do with his character. So when Chris and Emma and I in the studio started talking about the Joker, he was just right there on top of what we thought was a very short list. And then I got a call from a good friend of mine who was his agent and said, you know, he hasn't done anything since Brokeback, and he's a huge fan of Chris's, and you know, you guys are close, and he might be interested in talking about this. And we didn't even have a script. And so Chris and Heath met, and Chris talked him through his ideas for the character. And there was this great creative give and take already. And that continued from the time that he was cast. He was very much involved in what his prosthetic was going to look like, you know, what the scars were going to be like, the color of his hair, his outfit. And he always brought these amazing, great ideas with him. And he was just like, he was always so enthusiastic, and that was a great thing. When he was always on the set, he was like a kid who was excited, who couldn't wait to get in front of the camera to do his stuff, you know. But he yet always came from this amazing, real place. And that raised everybody's game on the set. It was a real pleasure to watch him. And yes, there were times, for example, just many times really, I mean, when in the scene where, during the party scene where he breaks into the party scene and he goes and he grabs Rachel.
Well, hello, beautiful.
That's played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, or in particular when he's in the hospital room and he finally has that confrontation with Aaron Eckhart, who's playing Harvey Dent. Those were amazing days to watch.
Heath was somebody I'd met with over the years for different roles. Indeed, I'd met him for Batman at the same time as I met, you know, every actor in town. He explained why he didn't want to do something like that. He was very polite about it, but very clear. And so I was sort of surprised to get the call, because it really more came from his end about wanting to get involved and wanting to talk to me about what we would be doing. I sat down with him for a couple of hours. There was nothing for him to read, but we saw absolutely eye to eye on the bigger picture idea of who this guy was going to be. We talked about common reference points. We talked about Malcolm McDowell's performance of Clockwork Orange in the film. We talked about Clockwork Orange, the book, and who Alex is in the book is kind of different. We looked at paintings by Francis Bacon for visual reference. We looked at all kinds of things, talked about all kinds of different philosophical ideas behind the Joker and anarchy and chaos and what he would represent. And Heath was just ready to do it. He was ready to do something that big.
I'll settle for loved ones.
So after that first meeting, it was very clear to me that it was going to be an incredibly exciting road to go down.
You know, you remind me of my father. I hated my father.
So we, you know, went through the process of deal making and announcing and everything. And I think the whole world turned around and said, "What do you do?" You know, Heath Ledger, Joker. It didn't make any sense to people at all. We didn't want to have that moment on Heath where we just sort of, you know, made him dress up as the Joker and suddenly he's the Joker. That would have felt very artificial, and so he developed the look of the character with Lindy Hemming, the costume designer, with John Caglione, the makeup, and myself over a long period of time. So we would experiment with pieces of it. You know, what would the shoes be? I think the shoes were actually the first thing that Lindy found that Heath was like, no, those are exactly the right shoes.
This wall is the sort of conglomeration of all the images that we started out with. I wrote there Terence Stamp, Bill Wyman, Iggy Pop, Adam Ant, Keith Richards. This is a sort of, you know, like an amalgam of shirt fabrics and ties. Everything with a little bit of edge and a bit of jagginess. And these are his colour, you know, different colours, kind of safely going towards a really black purple, and then thinking, no, we've got to do it, come back here to the purple, you know. And this is a panel of the final decided fabrics and colours.
One thing Heath wanted to do was to apply the makeup himself. As an actor, saying, okay, this character would put his own makeup on, you know, in real life, and so what would that look like if it just got the makeup? The thing that stuck from that is he always had makeup on his fingers and under his fingernails and everything, as he would have from putting it on just with his hands. During the hair and makeup test, we let him perform. We let him talk, we let him walk around, we didn't record any sound, but we let him inhabit the character and use it as a bit of a test bed, to just sort of do it in front of a few people and start to feel what that would be and move around. And we had some props there, we had different knives and things for him to pick up and start moving with and seeing how that would work. And it was a really, amazing experience to be a part of, to see him developing something in that way.
when I saw The Dark Knight, I just was amazed at what an original take on it that it was. You know, that he was joyless, that he was like almost like a heroin addict. I mean, it was tremendous. What an accomplishment. And I've never seen such a tongue-centric performance since Hannibal Lecter, where he creeped you out with that slithery tongue. I mean, I thought it was so original. I mean, whether it's the screenwriter, or Heath Ledger, or Christopher Nolan, or all the three combined, I mean, you couldn't, I mean, it's like an alternate reality where that's as valid a Joker as anything that's ever been done. Mine is sort of old school comic book, and that's fine, but I mean, I just had to take my hat off to all of them. I thought they were fantastic.
Absolutely.
One of the things that's so interesting about his performance, and he really tapped into this, is that you really saw that when he burned the pile of money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, you don't understand. I want everything to be worse than it is. Everything. It's like, you don't want the money? Those guys weren't evil. They were just criminals. They're barely even on the path, right? Because you want your car. They want your car. Their means of achieving it differ, but they're in the value structure. And the Joker character is like, no, he's outside the value structure completely. It's no, you don't get it. I want to make an art of pain.
It's even, thinking about it now, it seems like an even more extreme polarity of the devil than the usual archetype of the devil. It's usually the archetype of the devil, king of the demons, into power, likes making deals, likes bargaining.
Right. That's Milton Satan. Yeah.
Right. And this Joker is actually, you can just take it even a little farther. And this is like absolutely just wants maximum suffering.
Right. For the sake of suffering.
For the sake of suffering
evil.
itself.
Evil is the worship of suffering for the sake of suffering. Yeah. And Ledger played that out quite nicely in that role. It was quite brilliant.
It
really.
was.
Yeah, it really was.
From this point of this interview, Heath Ledger was by far the best Joker.
I agree.
And I would put him over Jack Nicholson, who had a hell of a performance.
Absolutely.
And Jack had a hell of a performance in the first Batman movie.
I give Heath Ledger heads and tails above Jack Nicholson because I know it's going to be probably bad to say this stuff, but it's my opinion. Well, Jack Nicholson is, there's a lot of actors who are just really, you can't take your eyes off of them because of who they are. Jack Nicholson has that face and that voice, and he's going to be interesting if he just, read the alphabet.
Right.
And so that he brings that with every character he plays.
Yeah.
But Heath Ledger, to pull out that performance when he's this dashing leading man, good-looking guy, and he leaves all of that aside.
Well, he was in that Knight's Tale, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
where he plays this like pretty boy, blonde hair,
for
Prince
him to
Charming.
be this scary ass, crazy ass character. Come on, that's the essence of what great acting is. He's no part of Heath Ledger either. But mind you, one thing that upsets me is when people think he was, doing this method acting, and he wasn't. You yell action, he goes into character. You yell cut, he goes right back into Heath Ledger. We were being very playful on set. We were always, doing magic tricks and everything else. He was just an easygoing guy, and he was playing even on camera. He was trying out different modulations of his voice and everything. So he was having a good time. He was a really genuine and a really nice human being. It's funny because on set, a lot of us, and even a lot of the people that was just playing day player roles, we would give him a wide berth. We'd give him, we wouldn't want to bother him, and give him his time. And he's the one initiating conversation all the time. And it was almost to where we look like assholes, like we're like not playing with him, and he's like, "Hey, play with me, guys!" He was just like, he'd be the one initiating the conversation.
So he actually ended up winning an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor playing the Joker.
Yes. Oh yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised.
Well deserved.
Absolutely.
Do you know when that, because obviously it's one of the most incredible performances of all time in Heath Ledger with the Joker. Do you know with that first day when you guys are doing your scene together and he walks in, you go, everyone's gonna be talking about this, or is this one of those things? Because a lot of people know, famously, when he's announced as Joker, I was like, this guy can't be the Joker. Like the guy from these teen movies is going to be in the Joker. The Brokeback Mountain guy is the Junior and the Joker, and so he does it. Do you know right away that this is going to be special?
Yeah, man. He was, and that's another thing. He was so incredibly chill. It's the first day that he comes in. You know, we shoot half of the day. He's in full makeup. Camera's beside him. He's talking to the boardroom. We break for lunch. I asked the director, so what are we shooting after lunch? And he says, well, we're going to finish up this side of the room.
Yeah.
I said, so do you mean to tell me that Heath has been in hours of makeup and he's not going to be on camera anytime today? He said, yeah. I was like, wow. He just did that for us.
That's awesome.
You know, I mean, that's
rare.
for real.
That's rare, yeah.
And coming from the guy who played Spawn, hell no. No way would I do that.
Right.
I will be in T-shirts and jeans.
Yeah.
If I can get, if I don't have to be,
you'll
marinating
give
in
him
my
the
own
line.
juices.
You'll give him the lines, but you're not going to dress up.
Yeah, I'm like, imagine I look like this.
Right.
See this picture? That's what you're talking to.
Right.
And action.
Yeah.
You know.
You talk about him having so much fun with it, but also being so deep into it. And obviously, there's been a lot of talk about after he did pass away, how much effect this character had on him. What do you think about that?
That drives me up a wall because people want to write the story that this dark character consumed him. Drives me up a wall.
Yeah.
That's people's imagination. That's the story they want to, no.
You didn't see
not at
that.
all.
You just saw a dude having fun.
No, this dude had fun. Like, and cut. So anyway, it was just like that. And you could see his playful character. Because that thing with the when he comes out of the examination room and he does the hand sanitizer, he's playing. He just did that for a goof. Yeah. Or the thing when he's
I was going to say, even when he couldn't start the detonator.
He's having a ball. He's modulating his voice. He's even asking us, the guys who are day players and everything else, what do you think? He would do a voice modulation, and one of the times when we were face to face, he does this really growly one that kind of is Tom Waits-ish.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, man, I like that. He asked me, what did I think? And I'm like, man, I like when you do that kind of.
That's cool.
That one. And he's like, you really think so? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, my God, this dude's asking me. I mean, that doesn't usually happen, but on that set, it was so incredibly chill. That was the environment. Right. So, and the truth of the matter is, he passed away when he was doing Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Right. It wasn't even this movie. Right. You know how much longer that was? So, yeah, it's...
that's people just trying to...
Yeah, it's a narrative they want. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Heath has a very masculine quality that I think really helps him sell the character in the movie.
He can bring stillness to a scene, and to have the kind of confidence in your ability to do that is unusual for someone of his tender years.
Of course. Heath's amazing, he's 21 and he's a joy to be around. He's got his head on his shoulders, sort of sense he has about himself. It's wonderful.
My favorite one was Heath.
Oh.
Yeah, that was. I mean,
nice.
this is. But that I would say that he was. That was pretty excellent.
The unfortunate passing of Heath was such an utter devastation, obviously, to his family and friends. And Gilliam was kind of stuck. So we got together, the three actors, two other actors, Colin Farrell and Jude Law, myself, went in and finished up the role basically for Heath. And basically all we said was just give Heath, it's Heath's money and it should go to Matilda.
I think it's a pretty unique situation. I can't think of this ever happening before. And it's a really positive demonstration to me of the kind of community of film. And it seemed fitting that Heath's work was respected and continued. Apart from a few visual similarities, really it's been feeding off what Heath already did and just simply serving the piece. But
we had fantastic acting. They were amazing guys, and starting from Heath, that was unbelievable, and he raised everybody's level.
Heath was really amazing from the beginning, and you know, he asked me in the rehearsals before, he was like, "Are you nervous?" Like, I'm not a competitive actor, and he was so generous with like helping me run through scenes before. And
just being, you know, on screen with Heath at the same time, I can't give words to how to explain it.
He always has been someone who I admired in terms of his work and in terms of his gait, the way he kind of carries himself, and to be able to spend time with him was a privilege.
I found him loaded with talent and courage. He could have had all the obvious leads, but he courageously chose different things and experimental roles and anything to stretch his range.
Every minute he was surprising us with what he was doing, and what he did was utterly generous with all the other actors. He brought out the best in them. He just, you know, he was there, and the minute we'd say cut, we'd be telling a joke about something else. We were back to having fun again. It was just a joy, and those of us who worked with him actually know how beyond extraordinary he was. I mean, he would have been the greatest actor of his generation. No question.
It's really interesting to see someone has such a powerful impact on people, on the entertainment world, and it's sad to lose someone so powerful. So, you know, it is what it is. I don't think the media goes too far. You know, going too far will be getting into his personal business a little too much, and that's probably what's going on right now. But it's really sad. Every time I see a picture of him, I can't believe he's gone.